Jacqueline, LaBayne, and Philomena, Wankenge. They're both founding members of Freedom Fighters DC, and I'm told you literally just walked back into the house from the protest. It was a peaceful protest in DC and in many places around the country. It was interesting, there was a lower police presence. Tell me, what was it like being there, and where does it go from here?
So it was honestly invigorating being out there with so many people, so many like-minded people with the same goal in mind, so many people of such diverse backgrounds, different races, genders, sexual orientation, religions, all coming together to fight for our Black brothers and sisters. And it was honestly incredible to see how much support we got.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible, the size of it, and the peacefulness too was key. Philomena, so the second part of that question, where do you see the movement and where do you see it going now?
So for us, we have a list of demands that we would like to see implemented. And for us, we're not going to stop until those demands are heard. My voice is very hoarse because I've been leading the protest and I've been very active today, so that's why my voice sounds like it does. So anyone that hears it, that's what the case is. But one of our major things in our next step is defunding the police department. Our biggest thing that we feel like is that the government tries to use propaganda tactics to get us to be silenced, and oftentimes they're used to the cycle of someone is murdered, we protest, outrage, and then we go back to our regular lives. But the difference between those movements and these movements, not that they were invalid or any less important, is the fact that we are going to keep protesting. And we feel a bit disrespected by the mayor of DC for naming the Black Lives Matter Plaza. Although we understand the intent of it, that's not what we asked for. What we asked for was defunding of the police. What we asked for was stopping, fix, and go. Those are the type of things that we asked for, and those are the type of things that we want implemented. We don't want some propaganda tactics that are supposed to satisfy us.
And that's the thing, you just don't want this to be another protest after another death and then everyone goes away until the next death. I mean, it is interesting. I was reading there was a 2014 poll after the deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Gardner, and 43% of people said the killings were the sign of a broader problem. 43%. That same poll was done again today. It is 74%. And I've heard a lot of people say this time feels different. Do you agree? And if so, why?
It definitely feels different. And I feel like a big part of the difference is the youth that are involved. You know, our organization, Freedom Fighters DC, is mostly led by youth. A majority of us are under 30 years old. This is our first time. A lot of first-time protesters, first-time donations. We had a lot of emails saying, you know, this is the first time I'm ever getting involved. What do I do? Because we feel like America has reached the top of the iceberg, and it's enough is enough, and we need to see change now. And I feel like a lot of America feels the same way.
You agree, Philomena?
I do. I personally think that this isn't going to stop. And I think that the government got comfortable in their systemic oppression, and that they played just a large role as the police officers in enabling them and giving them that power. And I think that they're finally understanding that we're not going to stop. People often forget that the Civil Rights Act was not invoked until 6 days of protesting $147 million worth of damage. It seems to be that there's a correlation between breaking down capitalism and freedom. And it's sad, and I think that's another conversation for another time, how capitalism plays a large role in dismantling minorities. And that's a conversation for another time, but we understand it. And because we understand it as a youth, we understand how money plays a role into it, and that a lot of the times, even the people that are representing us are in different social economic backgrounds than we are, and we want to challenge that. We want to make them uncomfortable, and we're fortunate enough that this timed into a pandemic where people cannot run from the things that we are dealing with. They cannot turn on their television and go and say whatever it is that they want to say. The biggest thing that I want people to understand is that you cannot go back to your regular life just because we protested for a few days and pretend that this is over. This is only the beginning, and it may be exhausting physically and mentally and emotionally. Even for me, I've cried many times and I've sat with myself, but you have to understand that even though we may not be able to live through seeing the change that our actions are implementing, we have to continue to fight and understand that it's so much bigger than us.
I wanted to ask you too. I mean, there's been a lot of, and you've got to say, justifiable criticism of the actions of many police. I've been following some feeds on Twitter that are frankly horrifying. A lot of violence. There seems, though, to be a lot of people willing to put themselves at risk. Speak to the mindset of people protesting in terms of their safety, Jacqueline.
So absolutely. So what we're seeing right now is a lot of allies putting themselves in front lines of these protests because we know that there is a problem in the fact that police aren't going to touch white people. And that in itself is a huge problem. The fact that white people have the privilege to stand and protest and not be bothered, but when Black Americans do it, they are bothered and they are tear gassed, they are pepper sprayed. That is a problem in itself. And the fact that we are seeing allies, that's great. It's great that people are getting involved, but this is more than a PR statement. This is more than a retweet. This is more than a post on Instagram. We are no longer allies. We need to be accomplices. It's not, it's not only protesting. It's what happens in boardrooms, what happens in city councils, what happens in the legislative process where white people are in power and not doing anything. We're tired of only seeing Black people fight for Black people. It needs to be all people fighting for Black people because those are the people being oppressed by our systems, and we need to dismantle the systems in order to change that.
And to that point, in many ways, broaden it out. And we just probably while you were in the Uber heading home, we're reporting on the global pouring onto the streets. I mean, so many countries. People have come out with their own complaints about deaths in custody in their own countries, but sparked by George Floyd, sparked by what you guys are doing. Do you take heart from that?
For me, I do, because I was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the effects of colonialism, the effects of taking advantage of the minorities hit me very hard. And for me, America was supposed to be a safe space. It was supposed to be an escape. I'm a refugee. That's what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a refuge. And then you come to this place and you see the disconnect and you see the effects of colonialism and the disconnect of Black lives and Black lives actually understanding they matter because we've been taught for so long that we don't. And so for me, it is very personal. It's much deeper than anyone could ever understand. And that's why sometimes I cry, sometimes I get emotional, sometimes I even feel angry to the point where I don't know what to do with all this anger. But what I do understand is I channel it and I use it to motivate me. And that's what I always ask every individual. And I always say, I cannot tell a Black person how to express their anger. But what I can ask is, in whichever way you express your anger, make sure that it fulfills our purpose and moves our purpose onward. Because we have such a bigger cause than to feed into our emotions.